Most people don't burn out during chaos. They actually burn out during ordinary days. You wake up, nothing terrible is happening, no crisis, no emergency, no catastrophe, no catastrophic problem waiting for you. Just a normal, planned out day. A few responsibilities, some conversations here and there, maybe something important you've been putting off for some time now. On paper, it all looks manageable, but your body reacts like the day weighs more than it should. You hesitate starting small things. You stall before simple decisions. You feel behind before anything even happens. By afternoon, your focus fades faster than it used to. By night, you're tired in a way that sleep doesn't repair. And because nothing dramatic caused it, you assume the problem must be you. You tell yourself you need discipline, motivation, but tomorrow keeps repeating. Because the problem isn't effort. It's that your nervous system never agreed to live the day that you had scheduled. Before you stand up each morning, your brain predicts the day. Not logically, but biologically. It scans for open loops like unfinished tasks, unclear conversations, things you said yes to but didn't want to, decisions you've been postponing for a long time. And then it calculates costs. If the cost feels defined, you get clarity. But if the cost feels uncertain, you get resistance. Not panic, not friction. You call it procrastination. Your body calls it protection. So you don't start slowly because you're lazy. You start slowly because your brain is conserving energy for a day it believes may not end cleanly. You've been taught time management, but your nervous system doesn't measure time. It measures pressure. 3 hours of chosen effort can energize you. 20 minutes of obligated effort can exhaust you. So burnout isn't caused by long days. It's actually caused by open demand. Even unresolved commitments stay active in your brain. Not because it's difficult, because it's unfinished. And unfinished signals required continuous background processing. You don't feel that as thinking. You feel that as heaviness. You rarely burn out from responsibilities you intentionally chose. You burn out from the ones you subtly accepted. All of those, I'll handle it, or how about, I don't want to disappoint them. Here's another one. It'll only take a second. My favorite one. I'll deal with that later. Each one is small, but your nervous system records them as an agreement or agreements. So you wake up not to a schedule, but to negotiations already running inside of you. And your brain prepares for effort before the day even begins. This is when motivation starts disappearing earlier in the day. Not because you worked too hard yesterday, because your brain predicts continuous cost all day. So it limits available energy before you even begin. You actually experience that as low drive. But biologically, it's strategic conservation. Your system is preventing you from overspreading energy in an environment it doesn't trust. And if the prediction repeats often enough, something bigger changes. You stop trusting your own plans. You begin choosing smaller goals. Not because your ambition left, but because your nervous system learned commitment equals pressure. Now a pattern forms. You try to change. You don't follow through perfectly, so you adjust expectations. I'll start next week. I'll wait until things calm down. I need to feel ready. That sounds reasonable, but the brain learns something very dangerous. Not that change is difficult, but that change doesn't hold. And once the brain stops expecting follow through, it stops preparing energy for it. So now the resistance shows up much earlier. You think you lost discipline. What you lost is your brain's expectation that effort leads somewhere sustainable. Burnout doesn't just drain energy. It rewrites what your body prepares for. If nothing interrupts this, the pattern strengthens. Each morning you start automatically, your nervous system records that as a normal way of life. And the longer that repeats, the less energy your brain allocates to change. So the real danger isn't feeling tired today. It's training your biology to expect tomorrow to feel identical. Not because you can't change, because your system has learned change never stabilizes. That's how burnout becomes identity. Very quietly, through repetition, not always in a collapse. Your body isn't asking for less responsibility, it's asking for authorship. A day feels overwhelming when it happens to you, but a day feels manageable when you intentionally enter it, even if the tasks are identical. Your nervous system supports chosen effort and resists imposed effort. So the solution isn't cleaning your calendar. It's changing how the day begins inside of you. Identity updates early in the morning, way before logic, way before planning, and way before discipline. Your nervous system asks this one question: am I entering the day or am I reacting to it? Most people receive the first signal from outside. So notifications, their messages, their responsibilities. So the day begins as a reaction, and reaction predicts pressure. But when you send the first signal instead, even just briefly, prediction changes from survival to participation. That's where energy returns. Productivity doesn't change first. Reactions change first. You pause before responding. And you finish small things you used to avoid. You don't abandon tasks as quickly. You feel much lighter at night, not because you did less, but because you negotiated less. Mental negotiation drains more energy than effort ever could. Right now, you understand this. But understanding has never been the turning point. Practice this. Every morning, you either reinforce reaction or reinforce entry. Both become identity. Both compound. And here's the key. The brain follows whichever you repeat first. Where the pattern either continues or stops, there's a moment where people realize their exhaustion wasn't coming from work. It was coming from anticipation. They weren't tired after living the day. They were tired from preparing to live it. That's why weekends don't always fix it. You remove responsibilities, but your brain keeps predicting pressure because prediction becomes habit. And habit becomes identity. So the body wakes up already guarding energy for the day that hasn't even happened yet. Rest restores effort, but it doesn't erase expectation. If your nervous system has already learned that days feel demanding, sleep won't reset that belief. You wake up rested physically, but mentally cautious. And caution consumes energy before action begins. That's why you can sleep enough and still feel heavy starting. Not because your body failed to recover, but because your brain didn't trust what was coming. Two people can have identical schedules. One finishes the day energized, but the other drained. The difference isn't workload, it's interpretation. If a task feels chosen, the brain predicts completion. If a task feels imposed, the brain predicts continuation. That continuation is actually what exhausts you, not effort. Open loops drain energy because the brain cannot see the end. So it holds tension the entire time. You don't notice the tension consciously. You feel it as mental fog, hesitation, or even avoidance. When your brain repeatedly predicts continuation instead of completion, you start organizing your life around minimizing cost. You delay opportunities. You shrink your plans. You choose certainty over growth. Not intentionally, but biologically, because your nervous system is optimizing for stability. So over time, your world doesn't get smaller dramatically. It gets smaller gradually. One avoided stretch at a time. One postponed start at a time. One quiet later repeated long enough that later never comes. And eventually you think, I guess this is just who I am. But that identity was trained, not discovered. The brain updates expectation through experience, not ideas. You don't convince your nervous system with motivation. You teach it with repetition. One morning where the day begins intentionally instead of automatically. That creates a new prediction, not permanently, but noticeably. The second time it happens, the brain compares. The third time, it anticipates. And eventually, it prepares differently before you even wake. That's how identity changes over time. Not through intensity, but through consistent signals that you send. People expect change to feel dramatic. But the first shift is very subtle. You wake up and instead immediately reacting, you pause. Nothing outside changes, but internally, you feel ahead of the day instead of behind it. The schedule didn't shrink. Pressure did not disappear, yet resistance dropped because your brain experienced a beginning it could predict. That's when effort stops feeling like force and starts feeling like movement. If mornings continue automatically and your brain keeps learning that days happen to you, and the more it learns that, the less energy it releases for initiative. So you don't suddenly crash. You gradually hesitate more. Plans feel heavier sooner. Opportunities will look larger than they actually are. Not because life became harder, but because your nervous system stopped preparing for expansion. That's the real cost. Not just exhaustion, contraction. A smaller range of action each year until safe becomes familiar and unfamiliar becomes avoided. All trained quietly by repeated automatic starts. But if you interrupt it consistently, the opposite happens. The brain begins predicting participation instead of pressure. Energy becomes available earlier. You start things faster. You finish more without pushing harder. Not because your discipline increased either, but because resistance decreased. You don't need hype to act. You need expectation of completion. And expectation comes from repeated beginnings. You choose. So the decision isn't whether you want change, it's which pattern you rehearse tomorrow morning. Automatic start or intentional entry. Because whichever one you repeat, your brain will protect. Doing nothing is still practice. Just practice reinforcing that same old prediction. Before you leave this video, decide once. If tomorrow begins the same way, your nervous system keeps expecting the same life. So interrupt it now. Take one slow breath. Type reset in the comments. Then go to the link in the description or the bio. There you'll find the daily reset rhythm. It's not more content. It's where you practice entering the day differently, starting tomorrow morning. Decision first, practice second. That's how patterns actually change. Burnout isn't caused by how much